Hello and welcome to the QSR Show. This is the show where we get under the hat of QSR. Now, it's a live show, and if you're familiar with the franchise show, you'll know the format. We have a regular live discussion and we focus on a particular topic, this time all in the world of QSR. And we have a lovely guest. And this week is no exception to that. We have a fantastic guest with us. Before I introduce you to him, I'd like to tell you about our topic and about the format of today's show. So the topic today is QSR People and Teams. So please pop in a comment, say hello, and get involved in your experiences of QSRs and the importance of the teams. Now, you will notice that we are in a different location than normal. We are coming live from Chicken Cottage in West Drayton. And let me introduce our guest. It's Tom Corcoran from Chicken Cottage. Tom, welcome to the QSR Show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Great to have you here. Absolutely fantastic to have you here. So let's get into things. Perhaps we could start with a little introduction to yourself, to Chicken Cottage, and a little bit then about why people and teams are so important to your business.
Yeah. So as you said, I'm Tom. I'm now the COO of Chicken Cottage, looking after all of our UK and global operations, and of course our strong team that we've got with us as well. I've been with the company now coming up to 5 years. And seeing the transformation that the company's made over that time as well. The company's been around since 1994. It's grown from strength to strength. We've done the typical QSR franchise brand where you grow to a large amount of size and then you realise the partners that you've got may not actually be the right ones, shrink it back down again, realise, re-establish, and then start to grow again. In the right way, and that's the position that we're in now. Thankfully, is that with the right people, we've started to see that growth, not just in the UK but globally as well. And the stronger we've become in the UK, the stronger we've become globally as well, and making sure that system works. So yeah, it's we're in a good position as a business. The landscape is challenging. We're up against a lot of American competitors now. Private equity backed, but the homegrown brands are still there and still strong, and that's what we're really championing in the in particular in the halal QSR market as well, because we do emerge as one of the leaders in that market.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you very much for that introduction. And we've got a few people live with us already. Let's welcome a few people to the QSR show. We've got fantastic Simon Wise with us. He's put hello franchise friends and QSR friends. Good to have you with us, Simon. And we've got Julie Waits with us as well. Julie has a fantastic event called First Friday. If you're into QSRs and if you're into your franchising, then please join her on the first Friday of every month, hence the name. And she's put good morning from a cloudy northeast. Great to be here on a Thursday. It's fantastic to have you with us, Julie. Let us know your thoughts as well on people and teams and your experience as to why people are so important to our business, and how we can nurture our people, how we can make them a bigger part of our business. So it'd be great to hear your thoughts. We've got a couple more people to welcome before we continue on the conversation today. We've got the fantastic Penny Hopkinson. Now, Penny is very kindly sponsoring this episode, so please scan the QR code, which will take you to her Manual Magic AI site, which is excitingly launching next month on the 17th. So please do that and reach out to Penny. Penny's put, hello Harvey, Tom, and all franchise QSR friends. Great to be here. But it's fantastic to have you with us, of course, Penny. We've got a couple more people. We've got Rimon. Islam, he's put, good morning, Harvey, Tom, and all. Should be a great show. Absolutely, I agree on that one. And finally, let's welcome Saeed Ali, and he's put morning all. Well, look, it's great to have you all with us. Please get involved in this important conversation all about teams and people. So, Tom, you said there that setting things up. You're obviously a really well-established brand. And you said that sort of setting things up right from the beginning with your people has really helped you and helped you grow internationally as well, hasn't it?
Yeah. I think going back 5 years ago, our company wasn't in the position that we're in now. What we realised was, for a franchise brand, QSR one in particular, you really need to look at where the engine is. And for us, the engine is the operations. So having operations as smallest team in the business doesn't always add up. You can't see it in that way. You can't have a heavy office support team and not have people visiting sites. We generally believe in seeing is believing. For franchisees to be able to be invested in the brand continually, they really need to be able to see the people that are looking after them, that are invested in the business as well. Not just from an operations perspective, but they like to see marketing coming into site and on site. They like to see people giving advice. They want to see people from franchising and talking about what's going on in the business. And of course, they want to see the leadership visiting sites, which is still what we do to this day. Whether it's a late night visit, I do in Tooting at 12:30 at night when I've just arrived into London, or visiting sites, early on in the day. The general, feeling is that people like to see people, and that real face-to-face conversation really does make a difference. So for us, it's looking at, we had to restructure and look at who we needed in those places. We brought in more people with an operations background, people who are people, orientated as well. And that's really important to us, to be able to look at that and say, right, have we got the right people in the right places to deliver what we want for the future? And it's not just here and now, it's looking 5 years down the line.
Yeah.
So it really did take a lot of soul searching, I guess, as a brand, and identifying where our weaknesses were. Starting off with franchising and making sure that we had the right person, which now is Sad Africa does an absolutely fantastic job in bringing people in and engaging with them, and being that glue in that start of the relationship, but more so to build trust. Yeah. Because when people start to trust the brand, that's when the relationship can grow. And then we move into the KYC and then the legals. And despite legals being a very much a touchy subject and making sure, contracts are in place and we've got all the documents, still need someone who's able to engage and has that factor of being able to hold conversation really well.
Yeah.
And then obviously the final journey, which is with the operations team, the real shoulder-to-shoulder action. So having obviously all of that support in place really does help.
Yeah.
So that's from our office, head office background.
I think it's really interesting. One of the things you said there, and about growing your sort of head office team at the same time as you're growing your operational side.
Yeah.
It's a really tricky balancing thing when you're looking at your teams and your business to know how to grow that so that it is balanced, right? Because as you grow, as more franchisees join the network and more fantastic team members are working in your, in your shops, you've got to have that support structure in place.
Yeah.
That's got to grow alongside it. And it's really tricky to sort of balance that, isn't it? And get that.
I think if you see it like this, if you see it that if you take a step back, look at the business and say, okay, our weakest part is our operations, our smallest team. It doesn't matter how many franchisees you bring in. It doesn't matter how great your onboarding is. If you can't nurture and look after those franchisees, you'll continually let them down. If you can't be visible and can't be relatable, then you will lose the respect, you'll lose the trust, more importantly. And ultimately, further down the line, you run the risk of losing a franchisee because they're not engaged.
Yeah, trust, engagement, relatability. These are really key words when you're trying to build that loyalty, that trust, when you're trying to nurture people. We've got a couple of good questions coming in, actually. So let's have a look at these. We've got one from Julie and another one coming up from Simon. Let's just read Julie's comment first. Julie's put driving the values of the organization across the team is always challenging. How do you do this for new team members in a franchised outlet? It's a great question. Values come and culture come from different places, and they're knitted into a business in a different way. And some people really get those across to the organization, to every individual. How do you take your values as a business and make sure they go all the way through the business to the fantastic people that we can see in the background?
Yeah. I mean, the first one for me would be, have you got the right values? Because they do need to be reassessed every now and again. It's a dynamic environment that we're working in. You do need to take stock of that sometimes. But recruitment of the right people, first of all, I think then it's not just talking about the values, but being able to demonstrate them. Being able, for us, we're very much a very strong halal brand. So for myself, not non-Muslim, it's showing understanding and tolerance to the religion, to all the ethics behind that as well, and making sure that I live and breathe the same responsibility as everyone else. Showing compassion and that where necessary as well. And I think what we've done over time is bringing people who demonstrate those values from the very early start. Let's be honest, not every business gets it right. There will always be occasions where you make the wrong decision, but it's identifying that and being able to either, number one, turn it around, or number two, react to it quick enough to be able to say this wasn't the right call. I'm not going to sit here and say that every decision that any business, including ours, is always perfect, but we do identify it and deal with that. So then it's, how do you make that in with the franchisees? A lot of franchisees who join our business, again, have the same cultural background and the similar beliefs. So we are quite lucky with that as well. However, what we always try to do is lead by example. So our operations team go in behind the counter, show how to do it, not just sitting and talking with a manual. It's going straight in, dealing with it hands-on, and being those people centered sort of operations team.
Yeah.
For me, that's kind of one of the more important ones, because ultimately your customer sees that in the end when the staff behind the counter are living and breathing that. And I'll never forget when he'll be joining me later on site today. Kays, he visited Kenya and he did all the training. So he did all the setup, he did the training. And when I went to the site to do the opening, he was there, but the team were just so energized. They were really on it. They was, friendly. They was dealing with everything as they should do. They were really happy to be there, and to see that being delivered in another country as well really hit home that we've managed to get that right. So yeah, I think it's really important to deliver those values.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think there are different ways to demonstrate that, but really living those values. And like you said, that the operations staff aren't coming in and just sort of saying, well, look, this is how you do it. They're doing it. They're doing it with the staff. I used to work for a coffee brand. When I worked there, I wanted to work in a shop for a week.
Yeah.
Work behind the tills, attempt to try and make a coffee. But look, you have to. Number one, you find out about your business. You understand what all the great people in your business are doing. But also, you realize how hard the jobs are to do, how much hard work they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I was on the till for 45 minutes. I was exhausted. People are doing it all day, every day, making coffees, making, fried chicken, and all of these different things. And if you've done it yourself and they've seen you do it, even if you're rubbish at it, like I was, it's part of it. It's part of that empathy with people, I think. We've got a few more great questions coming in. We've got one coming up from Simon, one coming up from Ben Moore, and another comment coming up from Penny Hopkinson. Let's have a look at the next one here from Simon. Simon has put, rising labour costs, recruitment and retention of frontline staff continue to be a significant challenge for QSR brands. how do you approach this as a leading QSR? Yeah, look, I think this is a really interesting one, isn't it? Because your labour costs, your people, they're the most important part of your business, but they're also they're quite an expensive part of the business. It's a big part of the costs. How do you sort of approach the subject of retention and holding on to your people, especially your frontline staff in hospitality?
Yeah, I think what we've started to realise is that the background has become more and more challenging, and everyone's right in saying labour costs have gone up. I don't think there's enough support in the industry for QSR brands, in all fairness, if we're going to be very honest about that. I think what we've started to do now, though, is to merge technology in with kiosks, bringing those in for the counter staff. That doesn't deal with retention. It just deals with the problem of rising labour costs. It doesn't take away anything else.
Sure.
In all fairness, what we often find is that it takes away that personal touch. You then lose that aspect of conversation over the counter because everyone's working on a smaller team structure, which we've definitely had to do over the last couple of years, is learn to manage where we would have had a team of, let's say, 8. We're now managing with a team of 6 on shift, and the numbers have gone down.
Yeah.
What we also realise as well, though, is that the delivery world for us has increased. So our sales are coming from outside the door continually, and at the moment we're saying between 63 and 65%.
Oh wow!
In all fairness, in our business. So we're learning to talk to customers in many different ways like that. It doesn't take away the labour issues. You still need to prepare the food and pack the food. So as a brand, what we've now started to do is look at managing our costs and, let's say, the price of products that we sell to franchisees. I think I'm in a very proud position to be able to say that a lot of our costs are similar to what they were 3 years ago. We as franchisor have absorbed a lot of those costs ourselves in the distribution.
Wow.
So we've managed that. We've also started to work with other partners as well to look at how we can keep every box of chips at a reasonable cost. We have some of the best market rates going. We agree contracts and agreements 12 months and make those stretch as long as possible so that the franchisee gets best value. So we're looking at every cost and trying to benefit the overall P&L, just so that we can say, let's keep a similar amount of staff and not have to keep making cutbacks. Inside the kitchen and behind the counter, I would say that engagement is the key thing for us, and being able to retain the employees is one thing. On the backdrop of a lot of other brands closing as well, we have seen ourselves in a favourable position of not having to close sites down for those reasons as well, and being able to retain people for the reasons that the job market is quite saturated.
You've made some really interesting points there. I mean, about kiosks is a great example. In QSRs, we're seeing lots more kiosks coming in, but like you said, it does help perhaps with some of the costs, because you can have less people actually taking the order part of it. But I think you've made an equally important part. You lose some touch points with those customers that are coming in. And I think it's got to be an evolving thing, isn't it? You've got to sort of see how customers are reacting, how the demographics are changing. I went into a QSR the other day, and they had kiosks and they had a counter, and I was just looking at who was at the counter, who was at the kiosks. And it was all youngsters at the kiosks, and it was older people that were wanting to buy it in a perhaps more traditional way. And I'm not saying I don't use a kiosk, but I think what you make is a really interesting point. It's balancing technology, which in a lot of ways can help people and your teams, but sometimes it's taking elements of those jobs so that they can perhaps work on things that are more important, more human-centric perhaps. But it's a very interesting point about those kiosks and how that affects your people and your teams. Let's get to another couple of questions, because this show is all about you. It's all about our community of QSR. So, please pop in the questions and get involved in these conversations, because it's great to have you involved. Let's see what Ben Moore has got to say. Ben's put, would be great to hear how you're supporting franchisees with rising cost challenge versus supporting them with meeting operational expectations while still driving EBITDA and top line. Yeah, look, this is a really interesting one. We're talking about people and we're talking about teams, but just like culture and all of these fantastic things, our businesses only work if we're making a profit, if we're making money. So again, it's trying to balance your example you gave before, actually, about those kiosks is a great example of this. Right, a kiosk may save some staff costs, or may allow staff to do things that are perhaps more enjoyable, more important than business, or can't be replaced with tech. But yeah, how do you balance supporting franchisees in that way versus those costs and and profit, keeping that profit there?
Yeah, I think like I mentioned earlier, we look at the overall picture and where we can make those savings for franchisees. A lot of the time that is in one of the heavier lines on the P&L, which is food cost, and managing that and making sure that we soften that blow as much as possible so that better decisions can be made elsewhere. We, as a franchisor, now work with a lot of different companies with our tech, making sure that that is at the right price, making sure that utilities are at the right price, and supporting franchisees with that. Who are the right people to talk to? What is the best rate in the market? And I think a lot of our operations team are knowledgeable enough in that to be able to give the right advice now. And even when we're setting stores up, we automatically go with a bank of partners that we trust and work with on a regular basis. Now, ultimately, it's up to the franchisee if they want to take that on. But as a franchisor, we can make a recommendation that this is who we believe is the right people to choose. So a lot of work does go into trying to find the right businesses, whether it's utilities, tech, or even shop fits. From start to finish, we try to make sure that the costs are always as minimal as possible. Of course, managing that in the future and setting KPIs and expectations is key for us, and looking at how we can then develop the franchisee in years to come. The shop that we're in now, the franchisee started off with one site. When I joined the company, he had one site. 2 years later, he opened his next one, and 2 years later, he opens this one. So fantastic. We're in a strong position where he's continually grown over time, purely by looking at a couple of things: food cost and making sure that that's kept to a minimum, but also service and quality standards, because you do want the customers coming back. And I think I've seen it myself in other brands where you want that P&L number so bad that you will take as many cuts elsewhere as possible. And quite often the only people that suffer from that is the staff, because there's less people on shift, and the customer.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you can only cut so many things out of a business before you lose something of the essence of it. And look, I think this is a really important question. We're talking about people, we're talking about teams, we're talking about culture today, but this is really important to that, because when you have to support EBITDA, top line, profit, all of these things, and you've got to try and do it in a way where your people still feel looked after. They don't feel vulnerable to cost cutting. They feel valued and they feel part of the business, and you clearly do that. But that's, I think, a really important message to deliver, that whilst you're got to protect profitability of a business, otherwise no one has any jobs, but also it's really important how you do that along the way. Make sure we use the word transparency, and I think we will a lot, but make sure just you're open and you're talking to people about what it is you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, and let them come on that journey with you a little bit. We've got a few more questions coming in. We've got one from Penny, one from Saeed, and another one from Rimon as well. So let's get to these, because as I said before, this show is about us all. We're all having this conversation. So it's great that you're here live. It's great that you're getting involved in this conversation. People and teams are such an important part of everyone's business. This is a conversation I think we'll have many times on the QSR show. So great to have you all with us. Let's have a look at what Penny's got to say. Penny's put, when you make a support visit to a franchise, do you ask what tiny tweaks the franchisee makes to the system to improve wastage, customer satisfaction, etc.? Using the Bayesian principle, tiny tweaks can result in mighty improvements across the network. Yeah, this is a great question from Penny, actually. You know, just those, do you take on board what your franchise, what your people, what your teams are saying to you from every level, every individual within the business?
Yeah, 100%. So from my background as well, it was always important to understand and listen to franchisees, because a lot of your best products will come from a franchisee. But also a lot of your key learnings will come from a franchisee in how to adjust, how to manage the kitchen better in a more effective way, learning new layouts, but also learning what doesn't work so well. I think sometimes your franchise brand will automatically assume that they know best. But quite often you've got franchisees in our business who've been with us for 20, 25 years. And taking some key learnings from them is so important. Understanding what is working for them, what's not, the quality of the product, making sure that is always up to expectation. And any tweak whatsoever that we make, if we made any adjustment, whether we changed the supplier, if it had any negative impact to franchisees, would be the first ones to tell us that there's a challenge and something's not right. It's listening is the key skill, and I think for us to be able to take stock of that and adjust is always important. Not always are we able to do that though. Sometimes there are reasons why, as a brand, you need to make adjustments and why the franchisee needs to follow it. Years ago we went from having papers all over the kitchen with temperature records to one standardized book and process. And it took around 11 months for us to completely cement that process in, to go into a store and see it being completed so effectively. And it's something that we're proud of today, but knowing that those little changes and tweaks that we needed to make, franchisees were telling us this isn't working. We would say, where's your records? Why are the records in 4 different places? But then as a franchise brand, the franchisee is saying, well, all your records that you supply don't work for me. So we came up with the whole new process, and even to this day, it still works well for us. And we are resisting technology on that one. We are.
That's it. I mean, look, it's really important to listen to your people. Some of the best ideas in your business have come from your people. I mean, there's that one that I'm sure everyone knows. I think the Big Mac at McDonald's was invented or developed by a franchisee, and it's become, their brand in a way. So I think it's really important if you're a franchisee, if you work in a QSR, anywhere within a QSR business. I was a chef, a waiter, all these sorts of different tasks within a QSR. I did all those things as well. And you made a really good point, and that was about listening. Someone used an expression to me as well, listening with intent. And I like that expression. Right? If someone's talking to you and they've got an idea, or they've got a challenge or a problem, and you're listening, and they can tell that you're hearing them and that you're going to do something about it. Look, not everything can happen in a franchise business. There's a structure in place, but an idea can come up, it be considered, and it's either going to be, go one way or another. But as long as that communication is sent back down, say, look, it was a great idea, but we can't do it now for this or that reason, or it's not quite right for another reason. But listen and encourage your people to bring these ideas to the table.
I've got a great example of that, Harvey. So years ago, I can't say what company it was, but it's a big burger company, and they have sauces in tubes. And for a promotion, you don't always go through that sauce in 72 hours, but you've got to discard a bit. So one of the store managers, it was at the time, he said, why can't you make it in half a tube and we just buy them in half tubes instead. Full all the way back to the manufacturer and said, can you do this? Yeah, of course we can do it. And before you know it, you've made a food cost saving on something that was constantly being put in the bin.
Yeah.
No one else was watching that because it's a small amount, but it's still an amount every single week that you're putting in the bin. So for one person to make that point and then to go back through the system just shows how much people can listen and take and make a change.
Great story. I love that story, actually. It's a great example. I think when we're in our businesses, it's very easy to think it's the way it's always been, or accept something. Maybe there's a slightly tricky process, but because you've done it for so many weeks, months, years, sometimes, you just accept that that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And that sauce bottle is a great example of that. People probably accepted, oh well, that's my wastage. It's the way it is. We maybe we try and sell more or whatever they're trying to do. But someone just thought differently there, had that idea. Great example, love it. We've got questions coming up from Saeed, from Roman, from Simon Wise, and from Julie. But if you have just joined us today, this is the QSR Show, and today we are talking all about people and teams with the lovely Tom Corcoran from Chicken Cottage. As you can see in the background, I can now smell the lovely smell of fried chicken. It's making me hungry. I expect it's making all of you hungry as well. It's fantastic to be here in Chicken Cottage in West Drayton as well. A great team. You can see them there in the background being busy in the kitchen. And it's absolutely fantastic to be here live. So let's have a look. We've got a question here from Saeed. Saeed's put, Chicken Cottage has been one of the earlier QSR brands to invest in direct ordering alongside marketplaces. From your perspective, how has the business evolved since implementing direct ordering, particularly in terms of customer behavior, repeat orders, and operational control, compared with relying purely on third-party platforms? This is interesting, isn't it? There's the ones we all know, the Just Eats, the Deliveroos of the world, and then there's trying to get that food from here to a customer directly. How do you sort of feel about those two different ways?
Yes, we brought an app in quite a few years back now, and we have seen a really strong customer base evolve from that. There's always the comment of the data is extremely valuable, and it is. For us, it's making sure that we make customers aware of that, though, because it's great to have your own app, but then it's the awareness campaign as well. How do you make your customers aware? We've had to rebrand all of our packaging, all of our bags, and make sure that that message goes out on every item that leaves the shop, that we have our own app. So there's a huge investment there as well. We'll learn from early on that customers were spending more on our app than they were on other apps because the prices we could manage a little better as well. So of course, with third-party delivery companies, you're paying a commission rate, you're paying a fee for that, and that luxury to be listed on their platform. But with our own, there is a lower cost to that. So again, direct saving for the franchisee, but making sure that cost to the customer is lower. So from a customer perspective, you can get the food delivered from a lower price, from the same shop, lower price, same service, and final mile delivery being similar as well. Now what we've started to see is these third-party delivery companies wanting some of that action. So the final mile delivery will be delivered by Uber Direct, for example, or Stuart, or Just Eat drivers. These are now more patterns that we're seeing with third-party companies who want a piece of that action as well. What we've started to do though now is merge our operations of our app directly into our EPOS. Everything's in a full eco-integrated system. Amazing. With Loyalty 360 now coming in this year, which means a customer can order on our app, they can order at the counter, they can order on a kiosk, and they'll be rewarded the same way. That was something that we was missing, that we'll learn with understanding a bit more customer data, that people wanted to have that luxury as well. And it was generally something that was being asked of over the counter a lot. Would I go fully with our own app? No, because there is a lot of exposure that the other delivery platforms bring, and and I wouldn't be in any position to say that they don't add value to the business. They add a lot of exposure. Yes, it comes at a cost. Could we, would we like to be in a situation where that cost is lowered? Absolutely, and we do, as a franchise brand, fight for that every single year, where we try to get the lowest rate possible with those companies.
Of course. I mean, so currently, is it the way that people can order on the app, but it's still a third party that delivers that? Is that the way you're working at the moment?
Yeah. In most stores, in some stores in the north,
Yeah.
they have the ability to do, well, in all stores, they have the ability to do self-delivery. It's just in the north, they take that up more because it's easier to deliver. There's less traffic and less congestion than there is in central.
Very true. It's interesting actually mixing those two things together. I mean, I remember dealing with I think it's a burger brand years ago, and this was many, many years ago, and they did all of their own delivery. And it was something like, you mentioned 65% was delivery. They were at 95% delivery in this particular brand. They had 20 of their own motorcycles outside. It was an incredible operation. But yeah, look, great question and great point, Saeed. Really interesting how that can affect our people using these different ways of integrating with our business and buying from our QSRs, how that journey is different, and that's going to have a different effect for your customers. Let's have a look at a question. Next one here. We've got something here from Rimon. Similar sort of thing here, but let's read this one. In an ever-changing world where third-party delivery platforms are being more critical to the success of the business, how do you convince franchisees to get late licenses to open later to capitalize on the late delivery market? This is an interesting one actually, because we're now talking about a different sort of day part, I suppose we could call it, or night part.
Yeah.
Do you find most of your business, I would assume, is a lot of evening business? Is it in your business here?
Yeah, and I think a lot of our franchisees would be in a similar position to say they can't wait for KFC to turn the tablets off at night and close their shops, because we take the upper hand then. Licensing is an extremely sensitive topic. As a franchise brand, we always and like to support our franchisees with those applications. So much so that we sit in the meetings with the council.
Okay.
We've had to argue the case many times. And one thing that we've learned is that the councils aren't always too concerned about the amount of customers coming through the door late at night. What they are concerned about is the amount of delivery riders that will be sat outside your shop late at night,
Right.
causing nuisance. So the delivery aspect, again, has come into that quite dramatically. And getting a license for third-party delivery, when you're managing with third-party delivery companies, is extremely difficult now. And having hands-on experience in talking through that, the councils and authorities like it when you have control. When they're your drivers, your chance of getting a license is a lot higher, in all fairness,
really
because you can tell those drivers what to do.
Yeah.
You can say, please don't park there. I'd like you to move your vehicle to the side and come into the shop, come to the back of the shop, and stay either private or come and support the kitchen staff in the back or cleaning. But when you have no control of those drivers, that's where licensing becomes a real challenge.
That's a really fascinating point that you're saying there, actually. I did some work many years ago with one of these sort of dark kitchen brands, and they just sort of had a warehouse somewhere, and it's full of these different brands. But they had a huge amount of delivery drivers turning up. The way they overcame that, and I really liked this one, actually, because it wasn't about telling them, what to do or complaining. It was actually nurturing them a little bit. What they did is they put a proper facility for the delivery drivers, a proper parking area that was designated, And the facility that they had when they came in had some nice comfy seats, places to charge their phone, all of these sorts of things. It's nice and warm. So rather than congregating outside, they're going to want to come in so they can charge their phone and they can sit down and talk before they're ready to collect their order. And they even had the TV screens in there that showed when their orders were ready and where they needed to go. So that was where they waited. So I think it's a great point, Rimon, that you've made here. And it's a really interesting point that we've sort of driven down our conversation, as to the fact that it's not just your people within your organization. You've also got external people and teams that you've got to look after, haven't you?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Let's have a look. We've got a couple more questions. One from Simon, one from Julie. We've got about 4 minutes left. We're going to finish at maybe about 10 minutes left, actually. Let's introduce the fact that we've got Charles Caldwell here. He's put greetings from Hong Kong. It's fantastic to have you with us, Charles. I know it's probably, late at night where you are, I don't know, but it's always great to have you with us. And do let us know your experiences with people and with teams and how you get the best from people. Let's go on to a quick point from Julie before we get on to one from Simon. Julie has put Ronald McDonald was a franchisee's idea to use the restaurants for children's parties in the afternoon when they used to be quiet. Again, look, listen to your people, look at your people. Amazing ideas come from every single person within your organization. So it's so important, isn't it, Tom, to just keep listening, keep watching, and these ideas come along.
It's that, and for us, because we're managing a global estate as well, it's understanding what works culturally as well. One thing I learned was, for us in the UK, we'll be happy to put in tables of 4 and 2. Whereas in countries like Kenya, everyone wants to sit around a large table, so seating of 10, and understanding that dynamic. And then in countries like Saudi Arabia, where actually it's more a cushion setup. Families like to sit on a cushioned floor and eat together. So it's understanding that dynamic. So it's not just your products, it's not just what you're serving and the people that you have working with you. It's understanding the customers that are coming through the door and making sure that you have that right setup as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting when you're talking culturally with different people from different countries. You've got there's different ways of doing things, and that goes right the way across your business. And you're absolutely learning from franchisees and learning from staff and members of the team that are local to that region. I remember I was talking to someone a week or so ago, and they were talking about some expansion they did. I think it was in South Africa, but I can't remember exactly where now. But they were going to put a coffee offer into a sort of a roadside, like a motorway services type. And it was on a busy road. And they'd worked out that all the morning traffic was on one side, and then all the evening traffic, it came obviously on the other side of the road. Now, in the UK, when we think of coffee, we think of morning time for that drink. We certainly don't think of sort of 5 to 7 o'clock. Most coffee shops are shut at that point. Well, culturally, it was different, and the reason it was because it was so busy in the morning, everyone just didn't stop. They just had to get to where they were going. In the afternoon or in the early evening when they were coming home, they had more time. And that was when they were buying their coffees, their drinks. Right? So they put it on the wrong side of the road. That local knowledge, that expert local knowledge, is so valuable, isn't it? When you're trying to look at different countries.
Yeah. We've learned a lot along those lines as well in making, so some of our furniture in one of our stores in central London is movable, because at lunchtime you'll have 1 or 2 people sat at each table, and then later on in the day you'll see the need to move some of those tables together because you'll have 4 or 6 people sitting at them same tables. So the store actually does a really good job in adjusting the furniture, the day part as well. because we don't have the luxury of space. We can't, we don't have huge stores. These are small sites, 1,200 square feet maximum. So fitting that out and making sure that you can cater for every customer is quite often the challenge.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well, having that sort of flexible seating as well to adapt to different day parts, because how you arrange your seating and how you decorate your stores and all sorts of different things gives a completely different feel to the people that are coming in, doesn't it? And like you said, sometimes, it's booths that you want, sometimes it's bench seating, sometimes it's bigger tables, sometimes it's only sort of twos, it's a real balancing act, isn't it, to get that right?
Yeah, and it is, and it's also managing that, making sure that it is serviceable throughout the shift as well. What you don't want is you don't want to have the area so packed that you can't get to manoeuvre any cleaning whilst the day part's going on as well. So it's looking at it from all aspects, from the staffing, from the service aspect, and making sure that customers have that right atmosphere as well. I've seen many examples where you are packed so tight in on site that you have staff squeezing through almost. But then likewise in some areas you'll find that there's hardly any seating and too much space and the place looks too empty then. Or you could have the opposite. What you don't want is you don't want customers sat or stood waiting to sit down and take the seat.
No. I think you're right as well. It's looking at the demographics of who the people that come in. If you've got lots of people that are sort of, I don't know, relatively young, or you've got lots of people that are working, and they want to set up a laptop, charge their phone, you kind of want lots of quiet little zones and lots of charging points. If you've got more sort of, you want families or older people, and you want it nice and cozy, nice seating, an environment that's right for those people, and also a bit more space, because you might have a family with a pushchair, or you might have someone older that's got mobility issues. So if you crammed your seating in and they've got to try and get round it, it's not easy, is it?
Yeah.
Look, we've got one more question, and we've got about 2.5 minutes left. So let's see if we can squeeze in this last question from Simon before we finish today. Simon has put, with increasing influence on delivered side of the business outsourced to third parties, that must be impacting the blended margins. How important is new product development becoming in the sector? I'm thinking about introducing high margin products like takeaway coffee, for example. Good example, Simon, by the way. But yeah, I mean, how do you sort of look at new product development? I guess some of those ideas come from your people as well, from your franchisees, extending. Someone said earlier on about that late night business.
Yeah.
I think when I was in the coffee shop business, we sometimes looked at later night businesses because there's a demographic of people that just don't drink alcohol, so therefore aren't going to things like pubs and bars, but want a social space in the evening. So how does sort of new product development, how does that go in the business?
What we've learned to manage our costs better is not to keep introducing new, let's say, new poultry products into the kitchen. Working with new flavours and new sauces has been one of the key things. And I saw Sky News do an article on this as well. And they'd spoke to some other companies who were saying the same, where keeping the core product the same is and a generic product is really, really key. However, adding new sauces and new flavours, new rubs, new spices has become a norm for QSR brands in the chicken sector. So that alone makes your model more adaptable. It means you can add teriyaki, you can add Korean barbecue. There's lots that you can do with the same fillet, with the same wings. So that's what we've started to learn to do more of. And as well as that is looking at dare I say, desserts as well. We are not a dessert brand, but one thing we've done is identify that add-on sales come from a pick-me-up, from a small tub of ice cream, We're working with an ice cream farm in Lancaster now to make sure that we've got some new flavours keep coming onto the menu. LTOs that have that burst, and then we take them away again. But they're giving us a real good idea as to what our customers want as well. And then looking overall, yes, we take feedback from franchisees. Every new LTO we do, we always take some feedback on as well.
Sure.
But we have a franchise panel that help us make those decisions for the menu. Yeah. So we're not doing it from a head office top down perspective.
Right. It's really important.
It's quite inclusive. Everyone, the franchise panel have a say now. And we're taking that feedback and insights on as well as to what works and what would work and what can we trial and do differently.
Brilliant, amazing, fantastic. Well, look, we have come to the end of today's show. So thank you, first of all, to everyone who has joined us live, popped in their questions and got involved in these conversations. It's really important because you're what makes this show special. You're what makes it different. It's not a podcast. This is a discussion in our industry. So a big thank you to you all for being here live today. And I want to say a huge thank you to Tom Corcoran from Chicken Cottage, also for being with us live today and sharing your thoughts on your lovely people and your teams. Thank you very much, Tom. Fantastic. So that just leads me to talk about what's happening next week on the franchise shows. Next Tuesday, we will be talking about QSR Ops Manuals Made Easy with the lovely Penny Hopkinson and Andrew Emerson. So please join us next Tuesday, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST. And we will be returning next month with the QSR show live from another QSR location to be revealed. I think one on the 12th and one later on in the month. So please look out for that. Invitations will be coming out to you all. So until next time, my friends, take very good care.